Welcome everyone to another low-level live stream here, summary of state of affairs. And this is 10 a little bit vintage, but not only. Let me explain. So the last days, previous video, we sold out here a voltage regulator for like the world's fastest 486, and right now AMD with a portable detachable heatsink. And previous video on the more main channel, a win-win situation of making T2 better Linux distribution every day. And I have a couple of bugs. Well, there are previous videos, recurring theme bugs and more bugs. The only substitute for displacement is more displacement. The only substitute for compute power is more compute power, and the only substitute for bugs, more bugs. Anyway, let me explain. So previous video, win-win situation of not only making stuff better for vintage retro stuff like the world's fastest 486-ish here, but also microservices, virtual machines and stuff. And this is a nice thing, which I kind of enjoy. But some of the stuff, like here failing storage, I need to still sort this resistors away, because certainly not wasting this resistors here. Storage stuff, this grub2 latest and greatest LVM stuff. So it's not so much that the storage failed previous videos, but that basically whatever advanced stuff you do with LVM2, grub2, even latest and greatest grub2 doesn't even boot that because code duplication and stuff. Today something similar, so I thought I'd just finish the 486 support, because certainly not many Linux distributions left supporting 486, just for the fun and YouTube video and stuff. But I wasted so much time with it. Certainly that is not a win-win situation. I'm not naive. A couple of hours gone of just bloody boot stuff. The issue was, so to summary, I have like a couple of issues, and half are not even vintage related. So the first issue you might see, this is grub 097, the good old version as patched and shipped with T2, because the grub2 does not, well, it appears to work, it looks like it works, but whatever I load, it faults, double, triple faults, reboots, hard to tell why. This is the first issue, right? So yes, it's 486 or maybe even 386, didn't test it today, but even memtest, right? I already thought, yeah, maybe something fishy with this memory, or the 4 GB or so hard drive only shows up at 71 GB, and I think maybe that display is only wrong. Maybe the BIOS can still read it. So I wanted to load a tiny little memtest. Even the memtest like spontaneously reset it and reboot it. The irony is somehow it works in QEMU 486 for some bizarre reason. Oh, let's maybe also let them pass by. And let's maybe boot that. So also hope that works. After a lot of trials for this, the same stuff ironically works in QEMU 486 with 32 megabytes. So I also have virtualization emulation, and this is why if you're wondering why do I have some dusty old hardware even added to my collection. In my opinion, maybe also Reddit and stuff should have. Yes, it's not primary business concern, but isn't it nice? This is also the attention to detail and perfection, right? Isn't it nice to validate that all this stuff works in theory, what should in principle be compatible? So yeah, ACPI BIOS error. It's like, yeah, there is no ACPI BIOS error. Anyway, so latest and greatest T2, no cheating here. The only cheating is the bootloader. So I wasted like over 2 hours of rinse and repeat QEMU and stuff back and forth until is this bloody bootloader? I thought this is a bloody hardware. No, it's somehow grub2. It works on Pentium, it works in QEMU, whatever is with the real hardware. And this is also the point of this video, right? It's not clickbait, it's like, it's simply I thought I can make open source a better place. Actually, are we even waiting for 10 seconds? But this is really getting out of hand. I mean, I also thought the YouTube channel grows faster, honestly. But But yeah, if you want to support all this stuff, so I've a long list, not only T2 bugs and features, but like grub2, what's up with grub2 that it doesn't 486. The next thing is, that is not the only thing. The next thing is no root. This is a new size optimized, more random life initRD in T2, because the full featured initRD is certainly too large for 32 megs of memory there. But here's the next thing. So the Linux people want to delete the IDE subsystem soon. As a good also, I said this in the previous video, there are two. There is a good old IDE and there is parallel PATA over libATA, the new for serial ATA and stuff, ATA subsystem. So only one should be. So for the last 15 years there were two, like the good old-fashioned IDE and libATA. So basically, duplicating all the functionality in code. The IDE, so the functionality is somewhat identical. The libATA is a little bit newer for newer code and stuff. But I tested this some years ago, maybe 3 years ago, in the beginning of this YouTube video, with Linux on a 386 with just 8 gigs of memory, I think. And yeah, so this doesn't work for me, at least. Also, by the way, this is a real thing of authentic AMD 486-ish, whatever. Also some bugs, not Spectrum Meltdown, but sys return SS attributes. Anyway, so we don't have IDE here, and if you like modprobe PATA legacy, that does nothing. As well, it's like couldn't insert because no such device, and all equals 1, and it's like probe all, I think it is, equals 1, and yeah, probe all only like flex mismatch. This is only probe all is more ports, I think, IDE port 3 and 4 or something, and like win bond equals 1, it's like no dice, couldn't insert, no such device. Yes, sure, this is vintage stuff, unless you run a vintage SMD pick and place machine or some industrial control and stuff, or you just want to upcycle some 486 or like Vortex 86. But in general, my point is mostly it's not only vintage reference, and basically what all the x86 stuff is still compatible with. And I find this a little bit disappointing, the lack of dedication and perfection. And it's like, yeah, YOLO, whatever, doesn't really work much. I mean, the code is there, it just doesn't work. It didn't work 2 years ago or so, or 3. It doesn't work today. I thought it's a QEMU issue, also doesn't. This stuff also doesn't work in QEMU, at least with PATA legacy on either PC. All of this, so debugging grub certainly could. Why do I ask for, if you want to support this, Patreon and YouTube membership? There's so much I want to do, but obviously with a couple of cents a day doesn't keep the doctor away for rent and food and stuff. And the balance here is also between, I want to ideally write more modern code, which I also like mighty server microkernel, and there's also a limit of how much attention to detail and dedication I can put into that. Fun fact, if I run with that Cyrix 5x86, and by the way, this is all new stuff for somewhat affordable from eBay, including the bought previous video. I get illegal instruction in mounting set standard decompression, mod probing the IDE module. I don't get this with this AMD 5x86, so I'm not sure what kind of locking prefix or whatever. I think they should be quite identical, and I built for 486. That is a little bit bizarre, maybe locking prefix or who knows what. Anyway, but this is still not all. There are more issues. So this legacy ATA, I think, somewhat generic embedded stuff, if you have a Vortex x86 or otherwise other embedded boards still in production, or in general, I would think nice to have if legacy PIO, programmed IO stuff, but yeah, Linus Torvalds, like back scrolling is too difficult for them. Yeah. There are a couple of more things. So I would say the libATA issue is certainly a larger one, especially with the IDE stuff supposedly being deleted. Also, this is a recurring disappointment of the major distribution, only caring about the latest and greatest, and all the fine code written over decades in the open source sphere in Linux, bit rotting, and nobody's like, yeah, 486, whatever. Anyway, let's not overheat this precious. Not that. We have more issues. So the other issue is memtest 86 that I recently updated there, another video. That makes me also rather sad. And all of this stuff takes hours, right? The libATA stuff, maybe I can fix the libATA stuff in, if I'm lucky, in an hour. If I'm not that lucky, maybe 2-3 hours, because I also don't debug in this bloody libATA Linux kernel code. Thankfully, this libATA stuff can be reproduced with QEMU, so certainly virtualization speeds this up. The grub2 not working on real 486, that is a bigger thing that could potentially take a day or two with either net booting or swapping here CF or CF cards or something of that sort. Anyway, so this memtest 86 is also, yeah, by the way, I had this here already open. This is, by the way, PATA legacy. This probably should be on screen. And so the code is theoretically there. I have already, I think, one more print K there. This is called, I have no idea why this is not detecting that. This is like, yeah. Also, yeah, Alan Cox of all people went through that and even wrote that. I think at least he did. Was it not here somewhere, Alan Cox? Anyway, or maybe module, yeah, Alan Cox, of all fine folks. But yeah, what I don't understand, the efforts were there. It's just like, maybe it even worked like a decade ago, but it doesn't work. At least not for ICE, or maybe for PCI-based IDE or whatever the issue is there. Memtest 86, certainly, so there we also get even more in not vintage territory. Memtest 86 builds but doesn't work. There a new release, right? I made one of those live streams, my daily or so random live streams here, of more live streams on the secondary channel, if you're new to this fine stuff. Keeping here, trying to maintain, Pandora box of open source packages here, var adm logs. So this builds memtest 86, a new release, or actually, maybe I should say memtest 86 plus. Maybe I even, for legal reasons, need to rename this package. Also, did I not apparently press Ctrl C, but Epic Thread Ripping Horizon will just rebuild this probably in 5 seconds or so. Also, maybe best with package name. So this builds, it spits out a linker warning and doesn't work. There are two issues. Also, all memtest, also another hour wasted trying to run memtest on this 486 because maybe memory board, whatever stuff, and also didn't work. And googling around, turns out memtest, since memtest 4.0 also do not run on 486. I debugged that. This is also reproducible in QEMU. I quickly stepped through that in a debugger with QEMU. This is in a division by 0. I didn't map to what code directly, maybe printing something, maybe clock is 0 or some performance number or something. This is faulting, illegal division by 0, faulting, dividing, at least in my build, dividing with the BP base pointer register, which is 0 in the 486 case. Maybe it's CPU ID, maybe it's, although I think it works, probably, it tries to print something probably and divide something by 0. But the other issue is that this, if I build this from source, it doesn't even freaking work. I have to say, the memtest86 code, I looked into that, not the finest code. We could also theoretically unpack that. Let me just take this phone call quickly back in a sec. So yeah, back from that phone call. Nothing better than one code live on YouTube. Memtest 5. The code, not the most amazing. It's basically, well, there are some nice tricks. I think versions since 5 or so have some really tricky, interesting code of relocating itself, because otherwise the issue is the memtest code needs some 100K or something to run. So otherwise you would only test all the memory except the 100K where it's running from. So to test all the memory, it has some tricky relocation code of testing 99% of the memory or 90%, and then relocating, meaning copying this code in memory and fixing all the jumps and addresses and stuff, and then continue execution. That is certainly rather interesting and tricky, but otherwise this code is, as correctly stated in some files here, also based on Linux, Linux 1, so really vintage, of like maybe head.s or yeah, Linus Torvalds, copyright 1992 and stuff, of startup code and stuff. But other stuff also. It's not the prettiest, not the most amazing code, and most importantly, currently it builds but doesn't work. I guess it has something to do. I also spent already 1 hour just on trying to quirk and hack and patch this bloody sources. It's hard to debug given the nature of this early stuff. It's like basically a tiny mini operating system, like a tiny Linux 1, if you will, like Linux 1 plus fixes and quirks and hacks and stuff. Due to the nature of that, not the easiest to debug. Maybe it builds, or probably it works with GCC 9 or GCC 8. Probably the authors didn't update the system for quite a while and use whatever. I tried the usual stuff of, obviously we are building without LTO, we are building with their default stuff. Probably it has something to do with relocation and read-only section text here of yeah, something. But I tried 100 things for over 1 hour. I couldn't really get that away. So that probably also is fixable in maybe 2-3 hours. But I don't really need this. But this is also basically a summary of the last 20 years. I don't really need this, but constantly I find stuff not working, of building from source not working, of 486 not working, of I had also similar stuff of strange embedded boards 15 years ago of my customers not booting with grub, where I patched stuff of like BIOS drives reversed and other crazy stuff. But long story short, I would love to fix this, and certainly I will continue. You know me, if I see this broken stuff, eventually I patch and fix something. But it's eating way too much time. It has for 20 years, since 1998-ish. I'm constantly fixing others people, not amazing C code. And I hoped I can use this YouTube means, and there's certainly this Patreon, right? So this is shameless self promotion stuff. We have here now this membership stuff, and I'm not asking for this to become millionaire, because honestly, $1,000 a month would actually really be nice for this full-time open source fixing, and even that doesn't cover all my running costs, obviously. So yeah, there's this memberships and there's this Patreon, where you can also directly donate to PayPal if you want to wish. I'm only asking for this because this is really getting too much. Some people already joking I get rings under my eyes, although they're not as much from the bugs as more from the little Padawan Junior keeping us full-time busy watching him at night, but certainly maybe a bit from those open source bugs. There are already quite some patterns, which is amazing. I have the feeling 30% for PS3, 30% for vintage and retro gear of SJ Octane and Sun and stuff, which is certainly all amazing, but to fix all of this stuff, like even more important stuff like libATA. And to be honest, I have here the recurring theme of the code quality. If you look into this, I hope a lot of people would agree that a lot of this stuff is not super most amazing. Like, yeah. By the way, there was also some issue with this assembly code. Although this was, yeah, I tried to use an older, as a fun fact, I tried a much older GCC on one of our servers just to test, and with the older GCC, this assembler code doesn't assemble. Also, original C code, and then like, yeah, we were not happy with that. I would also suggest not to use handwritten assembler. The maintenance burden is way too high. If it's hand-tuned assembly code, like original C code replaced with hand-tuned assembly code seems broken? Or what do they mean with seems broken? Anyway, because the real issue is I really want to move on. It's somewhat becoming here a running gag of our vaporware of microkernel stuff, because what I really actually wanted to do, which I made a couple of videos already, previous video, microkernel dreams, which in my opinion are the future architecture for the future, stable, secure, and so on, and developer friendly. And when I see this code here, my stomach actually turns over. Sliced for each segment, Baylor. And I would rather, I said this already, I spent so much time trying to get init.rd loading on arcload for SGI MIPS to work. Doesn't work for me, random memory corruption. I spent probably on the SGI Octane over 2 days, over 2 full-time days, just trying to get arcload. There are some Debian patches. I imported everything I found, patched it up to even compile, because obviously it didn't even compile. I debugged over 2 days, more than 1 weekend, more than even, knowing me, it's not like 8 hours a weekend. It was a year ago or so. Made a couple of YouTube live streams, and it's still not working. So instead of like patching like a weekend on arcload and memtest and grub, did I even say, I even forgot one more thing. Grub1, because now I used for the 486 here, which we can also get in full resolution, by the way, and then we get to the comments. To boot this, because, reminder for those who are late, grub2 doesn't boot anything on 486 for whatever reason. Grub1, or aka grub1 that never became 1 and remained at 0.96 or 0.97. If I compile this with the latest GCC, that also doesn't work anymore. Oh, yes, it's legacy Abundanware, and even I don't really use it anymore. But wouldn't it be nice if some stuff kept? Yes, it's legacy and broken old stuff, but some really strange stuff happens with that now. I don't even, but I have it here because I built it today. It becomes humongous. So you build this, I double checked, no LTO, no other, I tried some, it's like, yeah, 258, 120 in a megabyte, what the freaking heck is going on? This is obviously a GCC 10 issue, maybe similar to memtest. Maybe it works with GCC 9 or GCC 8. It certainly, I'm sure grub1 worked not too long ago, like maybe a year or two in T2. So yeah, now we have the package, but this is my life, right? Recurring theme, 20 years plus and counting. Like every year, new compiler, new C library, new kernel, that broken, defffs, yeah, I think it was defffs. Defffs fails out of favor to UDEF and systemd and GNOME 3, GTK 3, GTK 4. Adapt for that, fix that, new compiler, patching, more patching. The only substitute for patching is more patching. I see there in the build log, the reason for that is probably some linker script stuff. Maybe some stuff gets too large or other linker script whatsoever, something. And all of this issue is probably fixable with my knowledge in 2 to 3 hours, maybe grub 2 on 46, maybe a day or two, due to the nature of working in QEMU, but not real hardware, that not debuggable in virtualization or emulation. Maybe I can reproduce it in PC emulator if I'm lucky, but because if you real hardware constantly transfer network boots, that is slowing you down so much more. This grub 1 stuff, is it this one or this? So grub 1 builds. Here are also some strange warnings of assembler message warning value truncated to something. Stuff like that maybe, but I guess it's some linker script. It's probably trying to position stuff in binaries in some specific manner, and something is over underflowing or some signed, unsigned. But yeah, obviously this, you can forget trying to use 129 or 257 megabyte. It's also not debug symbols. I tried the obvious stuff. Long story short, sure, this is not, T2 is in amazing shape, right? Due to the nature of all the videos and live streams, which didn't make me a millionaire yet, but certainly improved our code quality and package updates and features like smaller inetRD, better LVM2 booting and grub patching and SGI, Sun, RISC-V and everything. Nonetheless, it's so frustrating that with all the work put in there, you just take a 486, yes, it's not the latest and greatest, yet a lot of people have vintage retro fun with it. And for compatibility testing and reference testing, why not? Especially industrial controls and stuff. And I also don't quite understand the attitude of, it's not the latest and greatest, let's break it. And on x86, there are not even that many instructions that came after 486. Sure, there are some stuff and single instruction multiple data, but nothing you would necessarily need in a bootloader. I find this just sad, right? After decades, and this is also the mismatch of all the people always announcing open source is the greatest and best invention and concept since sliced bread, and 10,000 developer and 10,000 eyes and everything is amazing, yet everywhere we look like broken regression, bit rotting. And sure, I said this so often, I would like to sit here with my passion and 20 years of open source and just present here, hey, everything is amazing. But the problem is, sure, a lot of stuff is amazing, but your LVM2 stuff fails, you can't boot anymore, you SSD cache, you can't boot anymore, you write 5 hot at a drive and reshape that, you can't boot anymore. With the latest and greatest Linux kernel, aka actually the real culprit being grub 2. But long story short, yeah, if you want to support that, this Patreon and membership stuff would really mean a lot. I have a little bit to reevaluate, because the point is also, I thought I make some video of world's fastest, like other LGR and 8-bit guy and stuff. But the problem is, of course, they only show some binary game and that just works. My problem with this concept is, of course, that the stuff that I try to present here often bit rot and do not just work. And then my concept was 3 years ago, like, yeah, let's just fix some stuff and make some video. But this is just way too patch and fix up intensive for that presentation of YouTube videos of, yeah. Anyway, because otherwise, and also people saying, yeah, this is your hobby and fun and stuff, you enjoy it. Like, actually, I don't really enjoy poking around other people's really poorly written C code that is bit rotten and broken. Not the greatest joy, I have to say. I would rather write the latest and greatest C++, Rust, Swift, Go, whatever. Everything that isn't as cancerous as broken C code. Because last but not least, what would also be more productive for me in a way is this microkernel stuff, this new hardware abstraction layer, and trying, sure, there are some people who tried some stuff, but I think a lot of concepts would be nice and novel to have for a compute infrastructure for the future, even vintage retro and real virtualization future. Even bootloader, I said this, I would love to have some hardware abstraction layer based bootloader stuff, even memory testing stuff. That certainly would make much more sense than spending hours, because basically all of this patching others broken code goes away from my time that I would otherwise have for my truly passionate fun projects of trying how far we can get with small code base, like 10% code size, yet 90% or so performance of a just-in-time compiler infrastructure, similar to Lua JIT, just for general purpose JIT, and also microkernel. That's basically the summary, and this is also why I just, on my daily work of real work here at Extra Code, which, by the way, don't delay, shameless self-promotion stuff today. Where is my also this one here of don't delay, try our amazing software and support and stuff today. And yeah, for that, oops, not that, but that and that, for that work. And yeah, the more broken stuff I encounter and try to just fix eventually, the less time, obviously, naturally, I have to do real innovative stuff. And so let's see, that is basically the summary. Leave in the comments below what you want to see fixed. If you want to contribute, you of course, yeah, patch is welcome. If you think, hey, you patch that for 486 and other broken stuff, patch is welcome. Documented what actually is broken. Let's take a quick look at the comments. That is basically the summary. And somehow I also think I probably should move a little bit on with doing more state-of-the-art microkernel and whatnot stuff. We had my precious keyboard. It comes from leaning it to my tripod here. At least we don't drop it like other YouTubers, I hope that. Keyboard previous video, right? Christus, thank you for working on all the cool stuff. Why do you feel it's important to maintain all the hardware? Like, why do you feel it is as important to maintain all the hardware? I mean, basically, for me, it's mostly bugging me that it doesn't work. There is no reason that it doesn't work, right? It works in QEMU, and for the low-level stuff, I also, here's by the way, an SES card. A fun fact, this SES card is also from eBay. Basically all of, otherwise I often have old stock that we really used, but this, I got really cheap, this SES. By the way, not the worst card, by the way, and can do 3D. And fun fact, there was once upon a time even Mesa 3D code for this SES 5000, whatever, 63 or something. It's crazy for how much we once upon a time had coded. Yeah, the Mesa code was also not the latest and greatest, really poor man's C code, not amazing, but it was there. It's on my list on potentially, like previous videos, Verge Voodoo and stuff. The Verge Voodoo is of course more, it's of course not what you would use daily on your scientific workstation. This is more of me testing. I always wanted to write drivers from scratch. I usually, for 20 years, I've mostly fixed, except our scanner drivers, but otherwise I've mostly fixed Linux kernel and Xorg and Mesa and stuff. Some engine is there, some cursor there, some improvement there. The small stuff. The Verge and Voodoo, I basically, and the other stuff, I also done Silicon Motion Link 3D and number 9 Imagine 128. Also, I think early Matrox. I also have done some other 2D stuff like here on YouTube. I only wanted to get into the mood. Basically, I wanted to prove a point of this can still be done, and I even will continue to do this. The Verge and Voodoo is more for vintage, retro, and demo, like demo scene of comparing the programming and performance and getting myself into the mood of being able to write such code. Start with the simple stuff before we do the full microkernel, multi-server microkernel stuff. Christoph asking, since sees so much support for this stuff like NeoMax and other ARM, and not many is actively looking to support these efforts. But yeah, for me, the problem is also I'm not the most interested in ARM. I would do RISC-V stuff. The problem is a lot of this cheap silicon from not AAA manufacturers are really, in my opinion, low quality stuff. Implementations that I wouldn't want to support, like 3D stuff in some ARM, like Allwinner and stuff. It's, in my opinion, from what I've seen, everything is quickly YOLO together there in some basement, and I would not even want to necessarily have this hardware, and God forbid even try to support that. I actually find this hardware of more quality than some of, certainly slower, right? But I really have serious hardware quality issues with lots of entry-level stuff. Gregan asked, why fix the Linux kernel if you can switch to FreeBSD? Well, FreeBSD code quality also not amazing. Recently, they even nearly published a release. I actually will probably make a video about that. First of all, Linux has way more drivers and a lot of stuff better supported and working higher performance than FreeBSD. And it's like, yeah, why should I switch from my 20 years maintained distribution to something not as amazing as T2? I would lose a lot of USB video capture, hardware acceleration, and whole stuff. The only thing I would switch to is writing my own QNX and Mach like inspired stuff. Certainly not copying that for copyright reasons, but like completely from scratch of more modern code and stuff. But so they FreeBSD nearly released a completely broken, insecure, and like validation function return true implementation of WireGuard, a complete hilariously of even financed and supported and contracted by pfSense. So some developers like took there some thousands of dollars or so and wrote a complete garbage implementation that they checked in and nearly released the latest FreeBSD release of complete garbage. And then only because the WireGuard developer looked into that, because hey, it's certainly carries their name, not written by them, but carries their name. They like, maybe we should quickly take a look because it has the WireGuard name in there, and they were like throwing up even more than we usually do, because this was a completely unusable implementation that had to be deleted for the most part and rewritten in 2 weeks or so of day and night shift because it was so bad. So we are not the only people. Like, yeah, WireGuard, is it even WireGuard? I think it's WireGuard. Too many names. WireGuard FreeBSD, I think. Was it WireGuard? What is the latest in kernel? Yeah. Anyway, probably dedicated video coming there. So of all the BSDs, like, yeah, they're even more vintage C quality. But last but not least, this stuff should just work. There is no reason that this is broken. Also, memtest, right? It's even, although it's not an EFI implementation, I don't know if you can load that with grub2 also on EFI systems. Maybe not, probably it needs text mode though. But this is also the point, right? If we do our own microkernel, like hardware abstraction layer with microkernel, I could maybe write a simple memtest, maybe not yet as amazing when it is working as memtest 86 plus, but I would even have modern hardware support, maybe even like support I write it once for my microkernel hardware abstraction layer stuff, a memtester and bootloader that can load other kernels if needed, and have support for maybe memtesting SGI gear, as well as 486 and latest and greatest Ryzen EFI stuff, which maybe this memtest 86 cannot even do. Then spending my precious time with this not as amazing C quality stuff to even have that. Anyway, but that's basically the summary of that video. Let's not talk longer, because that not only goes also away from my time, but also makes less people watch this video, because most people don't even start watching videos when they are an hour long. That's basically the summary. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe if you want to see more of this stuff. Maybe we even go live later again with FreeBSD dedicated stuff or other Certainly our weekly security debriefing on the more main channel is also overdue, but otherwise you know where you find the Patreon memberships, and PayPal would be, I would truly love to do this like full-time, but right now I can only do this like 20% of the time because I have some rent and electricity to pay, which is also why we don't delay and do exact scan OCR and PDF compression stuff each day, because that pays the bills better than fixing grub 1 or grub 2 or memtest or the Linux kernel. But that's it for this video. I hope to see you soon, and catch you next time.